All right, let's do it. Buckle up, everyone, because today we are diving deep into one of the most talked about moments in NBA history,
Oh, yeah?
the 1985 NBA Draft Lottery.
It's a good one.
This was a turning point for the league, the first time a lottery system was used to decide the draft order.
Yeah.
And, well, let's just say there's been debate ever since about whether it was all above board.
A little bit of controversy never hurt anyone.
That's what we're here to find out. Was it rigged for the New York Knicks to get Patrick Ewing? Or was it just plain luck? We'll be looking at all the facts, the theories, and the aftermath to see what really went down.
Some people might think this is ancient history, but honestly, the '85 lottery had ripple effects that we're still feeling in the NBA today.
That's a great point. We'll
Yeah.
get into all that, but first let's set the stage.
Yeah.
Picture this. It's the 1984-85 NBA season, and the New York Knicks, well, they were having a rough one.
You could say that again.
What was their record? Like 24 wins and 58 losses.
You got it.
Dead last in the league.
Absolutely the worst team that season. And back then, remember this was before the lottery system, so ironically, being terrible actually gave you the best shot at the #1 pick.
So the worse you were, the better your odds. Talk about an incentive to not try so hard.
That was the thinking at the time. Of course, it created its own set of problems, which is why the lottery came into play in the first place. But in '85, the Knicks, well, they were in prime position to get that top pick.
And everyone knew who that topic was going to be, right? Patrick Ewing.
Oh, yeah. He was the achy guy.
Ah.
Come out of Georgetown, national champion, dominant center. He was the can't-miss prospect, a franchise player in the making.
Every team at the bottom of the standings was dreaming of getting their hands on him.
And with the Knicks being the worst, well, you do the math. The odds were in their favor, under the old system at least.
But then, boom, the NBA introduces this brand new lottery system. What was the league thinking? Why change things up right when the Knicks were in line for a potential savior?
It was a big gamble, for sure, but I think the NBA had good intentions. They wanted to create a more level playing field, make things a bit fairer.
Right, because with that old coin flip system, it was pretty much a 50-50 chance between the two worst teams.
Exactly. And the league felt that wasn't really fair to the other teams that were struggling, too. They wanted to introduce an element of chance.
Like a little more suspense, a little more drama.
Exactly. And that's exactly what they got.
So how did this first ever lottery actually work?
7 teams were in the running for the top pick.
The 7 teams with the worst records.
Right. Each team got an envelope, and those envelopes went into a big drum.
And inside each envelope was a team logo.
Yeah, and David Stern, the commissioner at the time, would draw one envelope out of the drum, and bam, that team would get the #1 pick.
Seems simple enough, but of course nothing in the NBA is ever that straightforward, is it?
Especially when you've got a talent like Patrick Ewing on the line and a team like the Knicks with a desperate fan base.
Right, everyone in New York City was holding their breath.
And probably a good chunk of the league was, too, just waiting to see how this whole lottery thing would shake out.
So it's May 12th, 1985.
A date that will live in infamy for some.
We're at a fancy hotel in New York City, cameras are rolling, and all eyes are on David Stern as he steps up to the drum.
You cut the tension with a knife.
And then he reaches in, pulls out an envelope, and announces that the New York Knicks have won the lottery.
The place went absolutely bonkers.
I can only imagine. The Knicks fans must have been going crazy.
Oh, they were ecstatic. It was like all their Christmases had come at once.
Yeah.
But the rest of the room, let's just say there were a lot of raised eyebrows.
And probably a few choice words muttered under people's breath.
You can bet on that. It seemed almost too perfect, you know. The struggling Knicks, in the biggest market in the league, they land the most coveted player in the draft.
Yeah, it was like something out of a Hollywood movie,
But not everyone was buying it.
Right, because almost immediately people started whispering.
Was it rigged?
Was it all a setup for the Knicks?
The conspiracy theories started flying faster than a Patrick Ewing jump shot.
So let's talk about those juicy theories. What were people saying?
Well, there's the whole frozen envelope idea.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that one.
The theory goes that the Knicks envelope had been put in the freezer beforehand, so it would feel colder to the touch than the others.
So Stern could supposedly identify it without even looking.
Yeah, that was the thinking.
Pretty sneaky, if you ask me, but also pretty far-fetched.
Well, desperate times call for desperate measures, right?
I guess so. And was there any evidence to support this frozen envelope theory?
Not a shred. It was pure speculation, but hey, it made for a good story.
And people love a good conspiracy theory, especially when it comes to the NBA.
Absolutely. And that wasn't the only theory floating around.
There were more.
Oh yeah, there was also talk of a bent corner.
What's that? Like someone had bent the corner of the Knicks envelope so Stern could pick it out easily?
That was the idea. And then there was the Stern pause theory.
The Stern pause.
Yeah, some people noticed that Stern hesitated for a split second before announcing the winner, and they thought maybe he was double-checking to make sure he had the right envelope.
Or maybe he was just savoring the moment, knowing he was about to drop a bombshell in the league.
That's possible, too. Look, the thing is, there's never been any real proof to back up any of these theories.
So we're left with a lot of questions and a whole lot of speculation.
And that's part of what makes the 1985 lottery so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a mystery that may never be fully solved.
But hey, that doesn't mean we can't enjoy dissecting it and trying to figure out what really happened.
And that's what we're here to do.
Exactly. So the Knicks won the lottery, fair and square or not, and they secured the rights to draft Patrick Ewing. But did he live up to the hype?
Oh boy, did he ever. Ewing's arrival in New York, it was huge, instant impact. The Knicks had been, well, how do I put this? A bit of a mess.
Yeah, not exactly championship material.
Not even close. But Ewing, he brought this, I don't know, this sense of hope, this belief that things could finally turn around.
He was the missing piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. I mean, the talent was obvious, right? He had size, he had skills, a dominant force in the paint. But it was more than that. Ewing brought legitimacy to the Knicks. He gave the fans something to cheer about, something to believe in.
So it wasn't just about his individual stats, it was about changing the whole culture of the team.
Absolutely. And let's be honest, New York City, that's a tough crowd. They demand excellence. And Ewing, he brought that swagger back to Madison Square Garden.
Okay, so big picture stuff aside, let's talk about Ewing's actual performance on the court. Did he live up to all that hype?
Oh yeah, he racked up the accolades. Rookie of the Year, 11 All-Star games, led the Knicks to the playoffs for, what, 13 straight seasons? I mean, the guy was a machine.
Pretty impressive, although I guess some people would say that his legacy is a bit incomplete without a championship ring.
True, he never got that elusive title, but you can't pin that all on him.
Right, basketball is a team sport.
Exactly. And Ewing, he carried the Knicks on his back for years. He gave them a fighting chance. And he brought excitement back to New York basketball. You can't ask for much more than that.
I hear you. So he might not have won it all, but his impact on the Knicks and on the league was undeniable.
No doubt about it. Ewing's arrival in New York was a major turning point. But, you know, the ripple effects of that 1985 lottery, they went way beyond the Knicks. We got to talk about the T word. Bingo. The 85 lottery, it kind of exposed a flaw in the system. Teams saw what happened with the Knicks, how getting that top pick could change your franchise overnight. And suddenly, losing on purpose didn't seem so bad.
I guess when you see a team like the Knicks go from the basement to playoff contenders in a flash, well, it makes you think.
And the NBA, they knew they had a problem on their hands. This wasn't what they intended.
So what did they do about it? How do you stop teams from throwing games just to get a better draft pick?
It took a few years, but they eventually came up with a solution, the weighted lottery system. It was introduced in 1990 and still what we use today.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't exactly mathematicians, break it down for us. How does this weighted lottery thing work?
Well, basically, instead of every team having an equal chance at the #1 pick, the odds are now weighted based on their record.
So the worse your record is, the better your chances of winning the lottery.
Right. But it's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
Even the team with the worst record still have a chance of, dropping a few spots in the draft.
So there's still an element of randomness, but it's a bit more controlled now.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
The league wants to reward teams for trying their best while also recognizing that sometimes you just need a little bit of luck to get back on track.
And has this weighted lottery system actually worked? Has it stopped teams from tanking?
That's the million-dollar question.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it's definitely made tanking less appealing, less straightforward. But some teams, they're crafty. They find loopholes.
So you're saying tanking is still a thing?
Let's just say that some teams get very creative with their roster management.
Interesting. So the debate continues. But before we get too deep into that, can we go back to 85 for a second? I mean, we've talked a lot about the Knicks, but what about those other teams in the lottery that year?
You mean the ones who missed out on Ewing?
Exactly. What if the ping pong balls had bounced a different way? How might things have played out for those other franchises? It's like a whole alternate NBA universe just waiting to be explored. So who are some of the teams we should consider in this Ewing-centric what-if scenario?
Well, the Indiana Pacers come to mind. They were a young team, some potential there.
Yeah, they had some decent players, but they were in a small market.
Exactly. So the question is, would Ewing have been enough to turn them into a real contender?
I mean, he would have been the biggest star they'd ever had.
For sure. But could they have built a championship-caliber team around him in a small market?
That's always the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, free agents tend to gravitate towards the bigger cities, the brighter lights.
Right. The allure of New York or LA is hard to resist.
But maybe Ewing's presence could have changed that. Maybe Indiana becomes a destination.
It's fun to think about. Okay, so the Pacers are one possibility. What about the Clippers? They were in LA, already a huge market, but
Yeah, they weren't exactly setting the world on fire back then.
to put it mildly, but if they had landed Ewing,
Now, that could have been interesting.
right, suddenly they've got a legitimate superstar to build around. They might have given the Lakers a run for their money.
Oh, can you imagine those battles for L.A., Ewing versus Kareem, Ewing versus Worthy?
That would have been epic. Okay, any other teams that stand out in this Ewing alternate reality?
Well, the Seattle Supersonics had a really intriguing roster at the time. They had Dennis Johnson, a super talented guard.
Yeah, DJ. He was a baller.
Can you imagine him dishing the ball to Ewing in the paint? That would have been a nightmare for opposing teams.
A Johnson-Ewing pick and roll. Forget about it. They might have even won a championship or two up in Seattle.
It's definitely possible. They had the pieces, the potential was there, but again, it's all hypothetical.
We'll never know for sure.
Nope, that's the beauty and the frustration of these what-if scenarios. But it's fun to speculate.
It really is. It makes you realize how much of a role chance plays in the NBA.
Absolutely. One bounce of a ping pong ball can change everything.
So even if Ewing hadn't ended up in New York, do you think he still would have had a Hall of Fame career?
Oh, I think so. The talent was there, no doubt. But would he have achieved the same level of success? Would he have become the icon that he is today?
Hard to say.
Yeah, it's impossible to know for sure. But it's a reminder that context matters. The team, the coach, the city, all of those things can influence a player's career.
And sometimes it's just about being in the right place at the right time.
Exactly. And the 1985 draft lottery, it was definitely a right place, right time moment for the Knicks.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. From the Knicks' dismal season to the controversial lottery to Ewing's legacy and all those tantalizing what-if scenarios.
It's been a fun ride.
It really has. So before we wrap up this deep dive, is there anything else you want to add? Any key takeaways for our listeners?
I guess the main thing I'd say is that the 1985 draft lottery was a turning point for the NBA. It marked the beginning of a new era, and it showed just how much impact a single event can have on the league.
And it reminds us that even with all the rules and regulations, there's always an element of chance.
That's the beauty of it. You never know what's going to happen.
And that's why we love it. So to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the 1985 NBA Draft Lottery. Keep those what-if scenarios coming, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating look at the history of the NBA.